Welcome to the Women's Bar Association of Illinois Cable Show. I'm Judge Patrice Ball-Reed, a past president of the Women's Bar Association, and my co-host this evening is Judge Jessica O'Brien, who's the current president of the Women's Bar Association. We're going to start our show by giving some background on our guest today, which is Judge, Dean Perea of the DePaul University Law School. She is a past dean of the Northern Illinois University Law School, and she is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and she is the first Latina to hold this position at DePaul, so we're very excited to have her on our show today. And now I'm going to have Judge O'Brien begin her question.
You can be a judge any day, by the way. Any day.
That's great. I won the last show. So yeah.
I was reading a lot about you, and just wow, very impressive. I'm not just saying that. I mean, I was just wow, and I felt really that I was an underachiever, a slacker. But you have a very interesting background. I want to start where you grew up. You grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
And it's a steel mine area?
Steel town area.
Steel town area,
okay. You know, kind of like a Detroit or, you know, an industrial town. So a lot of what I would say working class families, kind of very, you know, everybody works hard, wants education for their children, and so my parents were really no different from that. So in terms of the life that I led, I think it was pretty, you know, kind of small town. You know, everything was very modest, but I did, you know, a lot of things in high school, like, you know, dancing and singing and, you know, and had a pretty good education. But Bethlehem was one of those places where you wanted to get out of, and actually Billy Joel wrote a song about Allentown and Bethlehem where I grew up, and he has a phrase in it called "The restlessness was handed down." There's a phrase. So it was one of those places, like, if you realize that the world was bigger out there, you kind of wanted to get out, and you were encouraged to get out and to see the world and experience the world. So I never really went back, but it was a great place to be raised.
But you were born there too.
I was born in Easton, Pennsylvania, which is right next door to that. So that's where I kind of, you know, I didn't travel much, so that was kind of my world.
But your parents came from very interesting background. Your mom is Nicaraguan, and your dad Italian-Hungarian. Tell us a little bit about that, growing up in you know, with parents who are coming from different countries.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because my mother came here to this country when she was about 25. She came with two girlfriends, and they were all secretaries to a man who was starting a small business in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So they all came with, and it was kind of their American dream, and they were all going to marry American husbands and have the whole dream fulfilled, and children in the white picket fence and all that. And so my mom and dad met each other and fell in love, and it was all, you know, it was always kind of working things out because they came from very different places. My mother didn't speak a whole lot of English when she came here. My father was about a third generation, and so they came and found each other, and then we kind of tried to make all of it work. So my abuelita was with me and helped to raise me. So I had a lot of the Latino background as I was growing up. I was a family translator, like many immigrant children are growing up, and had a little bit of everything in my life. You know, some of the Italian, you know, some of the Nicaraguan, and when I think about it, I think, you know, there was a lot of different kinds of food, a lot of strong sense of family. A lot of hard work, like, you know, with a really kind of hardcore kind of immigrant family feel, and trying to do better for your children and doing everything
American
you can.
dream,
Yeah, living that American dream, and then humility. I mean, one of the things that I think about, you know, is you talk about, you know, the impressiveness and kind of where I've come from, but part of what I always think of is where I've been, and my parents always make sure, and I see them, you know, and they're so proud of me. I mean, my dad saw me last week and he said, "I'm so proud of you, Jen," but they remember, you know, where they came from, so I really try to do that too, from that small steel town, and from that family that tried to kind of mix those cultures and all of that. And so I was kind of different growing up. There were times where, you know, from the confluence of different cultures, they didn't know a lot of Latino-looking people in my small town. Now there are a lot more in the town, but I remember being asked where I came from, you know, whether whether I was from Asia. You know, I was like such this kind of novelty. I had to go up to the front of the class and show people like where my family was from and things like that. So on one hand, it was kind of strange and awkward, but also I got some special attention for it too. So it was kind of always in the, you know, kind of these two different worlds that I inhabited kind of all my life.
But growing up in a steel town with parents who are from different countries, how did that shape you professionally and personally?
You know, I think that humility is part of it. I think that kind of always having this, I think for my parents, you know, even though they were very different from each other, they really cared a lot about education and really sacrificed a lot for both of us. And so, so I always feel like, you know, what they did together, really, you know, I really kind of owe them. That, you know, they made a lot of sacrifices, and I have a little bit of both of them in me. I mean, I can see, you know, my father's, you know, hard work and ethic. He used to sometimes work 2 shifts in a row at the steel mill.
Company? Okay, steel mill.
You know, to try to make sure that we could, you know, make ends meet. And my mom was a bookkeeper at a daycare center, and so, you know, she was always trying to navigate the world in a world that she never really felt like she belonged in. So she depended on me. I was very much a kind of that firstborn that was trying to help, you know, and I still do kind of help my mom go through, you know, those things. So there was different kinds of navigating that I did, and like I said, that sense of responsibility, that sense of education as a value, all that I take with me, and of course admire all their hard work bringing me up.
Now, you were talking about when people are in that town, their thought is, I need more exposure, I need to get out.
Yeah.
And so when you were thinking in terms of that, where did you want to go?
You know, I didn't know. I mean, that's the thing when I was growing up, and I'm first generation college. So there was really nobody around to say, you know, here are some colleges you can go to now. That, you know, the students have matrices and guidance counselors and that sort of thing. And I just, you know, I went to a few colleges, and I saw Cornell in Ithaca, and I just thought it was this beautiful campus, and I said, okay, I think I could see myself there. And so I wasn't really saying I want to go to, you know, the big city or anything like that. It was just kind of the sense of, well, this is really small town. I know I want to do more than this. I want to be more than this.
And so when you went to Cornell, what did you major in?
I first started majoring in biology, which did not last very long at all, because I took biology, and I was, you know, I thought I was going to be pre-med, and that didn't work out for long. And then I went into the psychology department because I really thought that I wanted to work with children. I had worked at the daycare center that my mom worked in. I really loved working with kids, so I thought, you know, maybe that's something. And so I went into psychology, but that was very research oriented. I was like, oh, I don't want to be in a lab with rats and things like that. I don't want to study children. So there was this department at Cornell called Human Service Studies that helped you get your bachelor's in social work and get a degree from Cornell. It was one of the colleges, human ecology, and so I was really drawn to that, and I loved that. That's where I finally found my home there, is where I was able to work with kids and all that.
We're going to take a break now, and then we're going to come back and talk some about your exciting life.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Before the moon was within our reach, before free love, before civil rights was a movement, before rock and roll rocked, and before women had the most fundamental right, even before America was the land of possibilities, there was a man who believed it was possible. Discover Lincoln in the land he called home at enjoyillinois.com.
Welcome back to the show. We took a break from talking with Dean Perea, and our last question was with regard to her time at Cornell. And so we're going to have Judge O'Brien ask some more questions with regard to that.
So Dean, you were at Cornell. You know, they do have it's a beautiful campus there, and they have a great hotel and food administration, by the way.
That's correct. That's correct. One of the best.
Yes, and but when you were in Cornell, you went through some really tough times that you even wanted to quit college. Tell us about that.
Yeah. That was, I'm not sure how you figured out that, but that's a little bit of a family secret, but yeah. But, you know, it was a really hard transitioning to college. So as much as I wanted to get out, I really didn't have the skills. I had been pretty protected, and I didn't have anybody in my family. I felt really different, and so I was in an all-girls dorm. I didn't go to orientation because I didn't, you know, parts of orientation, I didn't know what to do, where to go. I wasn't asked to rush sororities, things like that. So I started to get very lonely, and I said and I had a boyfriend who was somewhere else, and I said to my parents, you know, I can't be here. It was freshman year. It was about October of freshman year. I said, I don't like it here. I'm going to go be with my boyfriend. And my parents, who at the time, this is a poignant story because at the time they were not getting along at all. They divorced a few years after that. But they got in that car together, and I can't even imagine how that car ride was like. 4 hours driving up to Cornell, but they wanted to keep me in school, and they knew that was important for me to do that. So they came, and I remember so vividly, they sat me down on that bed, and they said, you know, you're not doing this. We cannot support you. We love you. But we've done all this to get you here, and it would be such a mistake for you to leave now. And I listened, and you know, kind of the rest is history. And you know, and then I started to. It was a little bit of a wake up call for me, because even though, and now, you know, I think so that there's so much more for students, for affinity groups and that sort of thing. Like you can get lost in college and not know kind of where to go. And I finally found then a group of friends, and et cetera. And then I finally, you know, found my way. But my parents, if it had not been for that ride that they made and they sat me down, I don't think I'd be where I am today.
You know, that's interesting though, because that experience obviously shaped you professionally. Because I know as a dean, I hear so many great things about how you're so welcoming to your students, and you really go out of your way to make your students feel welcome to your school. So that must be part of it.
Yeah.
So you majored in biology, you said?
Yes, and then psychology, then social work. So I ended up in social work.
When did you decide to go to law school?
It was my senior year in college. So I had not thought about being a lawyer before that. I was going to be a social worker, and I was going to be a caseworker. And so one of the things that we did as part of our program as seniors is we had a practicum. So we spent 2 or 3 days out in the field. I was in a child protective service. I was working with kids who had been neglected and child sexual abuse and all of that. And so I knew that was an area that I really wanted to get involved in. But as I started working there, I realized that a lot of the problems that the children had were really bigger problems. They were the problems of the legal system. They were problems of poverty. They were problems of racism. And I thought, you know, in the long view, I couldn't be a caseworker because one by one, I didn't feel like I could really make a difference.
Why did you think that?
Because I just thought that the problems were so much bigger. Because the department I was in at Cornell didn't just teach you about kind of the skills of being a social worker. It taught you, and this was in the late 70s, early 80s, of all of the cultural, social, and legal factors that lead to the vulnerability of children and other vulnerable populations. So I got this larger view. It's called an ecological perspective, which they were known by. It's like, here's a family in crisis, but look at these other things that are making this mother hurt this child or neglect this child. And I said, I definitely wanted to still work in that area, but I wanted to work at it in a more macro, in a more policy kind of perspective. So I started to really admire like the Children's Defense Fund and other advocacy organizations that worked with children. I thought, that's what I want to do. So I want to get my law degree because I thought I could be much more influential and have much more impact if I was able to go into the law and do that rather than be a caseworker all my life. And I guess I also saw when I was in the social work setting is a lot of burnout and a lot of, I saw a lot of those caseworkers and how weary they were and how some of them actually got, they they weren't as as close. They were kind of they were going through the motions, but they weren't invested in the families. And I thought, well, I can maybe make a difference a different way. And also at the time, I was also doing speech contests, so I was kind of building my skills inadvertently. So that kind of poised me.
Did you win those contests?
I got placed in those contests. I did not win, but yeah, another skill that I picked up along the way that helps me a lot today.
So then you applied to the University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and actually, yeah. So what I had gotten into some law schools, but what happened was in my senior year, right before my senior year of college, I got in a very bad car accident. And so I had been rehabilitating during that senior year, during that practicum year, and so I was kind of hobbling around on crutches and things like that. And so I was going to go to law school, and I got into Penn. I was so excited to go, and then my leg hadn't healed quite enough. So I went for like a week or two, and I was like, I can't do this. So I deferred my admission. I went back to Ithaca. I taught English as a second language in the elementary and the middle schools for the year, and then I went back to Penn the following year.
Sure, Alpamita was proud of you.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So after the deferment, you went to law school, and what made you decide to move into the area of being a faculty member, as it were, or becoming a dean? How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, it's everything happens like for skill and luck and circumstance and advocates everywhere. But so the long, the shorter version of the story is when I was in law school, I thought eventually I wanted to go with children in law and family law. But once I got into first year, there was kind of all this pressure, good pressure, because I had done well, to go into the commercial kind of more the big firm and to do that track. And so I kind of got lulled into it. So I did the big firms for 2 summers, and I did the clerkship and all of that. And then I got into a law firm after my clerkship, and it was really a great experience, great lawyers and all that. But by the middle of after 6 months, I said, I'm not really happy. This is not what I want to do. And during college, I did a lot of teaching and I did a lot of counseling. And I thought, what, my heart is and my calling is really in teaching. And even when I was in law school, there were people say, you should be a law professor. You explain things so well. You're so dynamic, whatever. And so I said, yeah, whatever. I'll do that in 10 years. But after 6 months, I was ready. And so that's kind of where I started. And I became a legal writing instructor at Villanova. And then I got my appointment at Brooklyn.
Well, it sounds like you know yourself well enough to know what the next step was. We're going to take a break here. We'll have some more questions after the break.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Now, Krista, make sure you stay with her the whole time. She's new to the country. This is her first day. This is a brand new country. It's a whole different culture.
Gonna be okay.
Now, make sure you stay with her the whole time. I'll be here right after school to pick you up.
Okay, Mom.
Okay, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ignore my mom. She's so annoying. She's totally freaking out about this whole thing. She freaks out about everything. She always does that. Ignore my mom. So, ready for your first day in the wicked castle of doom? I mean, like, seriously, it's so boring. I don't know how they can put us through this, like, every single day. How many schools do you have in your village? None.
We've been talking with Dean Perea of DePaul University School of Law, and the last question that we talked about was her transition from law school into becoming a law school professor. So Judge O'Brien is going to ask her some more questions about that, and we'll see what else she's been doing.
What else is she, or what is she not doing? So you started teaching at Villanova. After working for a big firm for 6 months.
And then it was about 40. It was a more boutique-ish, but that had a lot of former federal clerks in it. So there were, so it was I would say a kind of large firm kind of practice in terms of complexity, but in a small firm environment. So I did that for a year.
So you were a professor at Villanova?
Yeah, in those days they were legal writing instructors,
Okay.
and so you could stay for a couple of years, and I just wanted to get started, and that's kind of was my entree in, and so I taught legal writing to first-year students essentially for a couple of years. And while I was doing that, I was writing and trying to figure out how to get my way into a tenure track position, because that's what I really wanted. To Brooklyn Law School.
Okay.
And so I got that appointment, I think it was in 91 or 92, and started there, and I taught a bunch of different subjects, which I all loved. So I finally was back with family law, children in the law. I taught civil procedure in the first year. And then in the mid 1990s, about 4 years into my professorship, I really thought it was interesting to think about how health or really the ethical side of health interact with family law. And so that became kind of my area of research, and I did a lot of trainings of judges and of lawyers in that area. And so that kind of became my area of expertise. So then I started teaching bioethics and genetics and all that. So that kind of became my package when I was a professor, and was really fun.
How long were you doing that? Because while you were doing that, of course, you became nationally recognized for those areas.
Yeah.
Family law, biotech.
Bioethics.
Bioethics. And there was another one, another area that you were also nationally recognized. Did you write articles about those areas?
Yes,
okay.
yeah. So I taught in those areas, and I also did professional development in those areas. So I was, on different, committees that were in academia, like the family law section, the health law section, things like that. But also with practitioners, I would work in the family law area. But then I did my writing, and what it was a really interesting area. So in that intersection, there are issues like who should make healthcare decisions for children, or when you have custody issues regarding, results of surrogacy, things like that, who are the parents? Especially if you have, somebody donating an egg, somebody donating a sperm, you have a surrogate mom. Who should have the parental rights? So there were issues like that. Adolescent decision making was a big area that I studied, and I really enjoyed that. And then I worked and started to write and think about assisted reproductive technology. At the beginning of it, more, it was in the 1990s and 2000s. Now it's kind of like, oh yeah, of course, but then, and I used to lecture to family law judges, they were like, what do we do with these cases? Because we can't make sense, they're trying to use like traditional family law principles, but this is really a new kind of family that's being created. And so it just was, it was great to do that. And so I was at Brooklyn for 14 years, and the last 2 years I was called and I was asked to be the dean of students. So that's part of, again, that kind of teaching, that, wanting to be nurturing, mentoring.
Brooklyn Law.
So I became the dean of student affairs there, and it was a freestanding law school like John Marshall. And we had about 1,400 students, and I did the whole range of counseling students, student organizations, helping them with financial aid issues, public interest. There was a whole range of issues, and so that kind of got me into administration. And I realized that I really enjoyed it, and I was good at it. And it's like, oh, okay, it's nothing I planned to do. It was just kind of something that I kept growing into. Right. Oh, you're going to head committees, and you're going to do this, and you're going to start this program. Oh, why don't you be the dean of student affairs? Like, okay, I'll try it. And that was a hard job. There's a lot of issues to deal with, a lot of stressful situations that you deal with. But then it gave me kind of the bug and the calling for doing administration, and to see how much impact you can make, one-to-one, but also kind of on a policy level in helping students. And when I was when I was the dean of student affairs, and then I got this call. Do you want to help start a new law school? And I was like, You want to be the Dean of Student Affairs at a brand new law school we're starting at Drexel University? And so somebody I had worked with at the firm was the general counsel.
The boutique law firm?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's the general counsel of Drexel, and he had remembered me, again, relationships. He's like, Jen, you want to come on board? And so I started working with them to try, to work on developing the plan for the law school, and then I started as the dean there.
You never know what's ahead of us, isn't it?
No, absolutely.
Where's Drexel located?
In Philadelphia,
Okay,
right
so
near
it's
University of
near-
Pennsylvania, so it's in
okay.
University
So
City.
that was your first deanship,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
And so you got the bug, as it
Yeah,
were.
yeah.
And so what made you make the transition from there to, was NIU next?
Yeah, so Drexel was a little bit of a quirky situation because I had been hired to be the Dean of Student Affairs there and to set up all the departments and to help hire for career placement and student affairs, student services, register, all that. And what happened was there were a group of us who were the founding faculty of Drexel. And so we were involved about a year before as consultants, essentially, but we were spending time there helping with hiring faculty, different things like that. But it was 6 or 8 weeks before school was starting, and we didn't have a dean yet. And the students were coming, and the provost and I talked, and he said, would you be acting dean for as long as it takes us to search for a permanent dean?
Okay.
And I said, sure. Because that was a good way to kind of try out the job. I didn't want to be a dean at that point. I really was very excited to set up all the departments at Drexel. But then I kind of fell into this, it was again serendipity. And it's like, okay, sure, I'll try that. And that was really the most exciting year I've ever had. There have been close ones like this year, but kind of really starting a law school from scratch, essentially, and kind of asking the basic questions about how do you build a law school, how do you build a successful law school, how do you train students for practice, and kind of build all the building blocks. It's very unique.
This evening we have spoken with Dean Perea of DePaul University School of Law. She's the first Latina to hold that position, and we're so excited for her. She's given us some great information about her history, about the travels that she's had in terms of getting to the point she is now, and we've been so excited that she allowed us to look into her life and see what she's been doing. So we're going to try to do another segment in the future, and we hope you'll tune in then. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Dean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
My pleasure.